Hey, this is Robert Rusler, and you're listening to Zach and Dustin on $2 late fee. Love you guys.
It's like is it a motorcycle or is it
It's an electric bike that
Electric
actually goes 50 miles an hour.
50?
50.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that a Super 73?
I had a little work done on the governor, and now it's a little more dangerous than I would like.
How'd you soup it up?
I am not mechanically inclined to say.
This has been a long time in the making. I think you are a big part of our 80s history, our love of the 80s and the 90s, and so many of the films you've been in. Your appearances have really been, impactful to us.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, we covered maybe 2 years ago. We covered Shag. We had Annabeth Gish on the show, and we talked to her about the idea of Buzz being a sweet potato, if I recall. And she had nothing but great things to say about her experience with you. But but that movie in general was that a good experience for you?
Oh, I mean, how do I really explain it in words? I mean, honestly, when I got the movie and I found out that I was going to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina for the summer, I kind of was a little apprehensive because I didn't know anything about Myrtle Beach, and I figured I was going to Podunkville for 3 months. And much to my surprise, when I got there, it was a blast. I mean, what a great place to spend a summer when you're young and actually of age. It was like that time when it wasn't like I was a teenager. I was just a young man. And Myrtle Beach, South Carolina in 1989 was firing on all cylinders. I mean, there was so much to do. There were so many young people. It was clean and gorgeous. And I was staying at a beautiful Four Seasons hotel right on the beach. And there was no shortage of Southern belles. I mean, I was not a sweet potato. I was kind of a naughty potato, if I'm being honest. And I have also just fond memories. I love Annabeth Gish. I still love Annabeth Gish. She's just a wonderful person, and funny and charming, and super, just super intellectual. And I mean, there's everybody on the cast, Bridget Fonda, that was her first movie, and she was nervous for no good reason because I thought she stole the movie, and she was just so engaging and likable and gorgeous, and Phoebe Cates was wonderful. I used to dream about her, as many of us did at our age. All I could keep thinking about when I looked at her was, "Hi, Brad," and I got to kiss her, and they paid me for it. I mean, I feel extremely lucky and grateful to not only have done Shag, but all the movies that I've done that have turned out to be a blessing, and turned out to be cult classics. And some of the films that I've appeared in have been very iconic. And yeah, I mean, when I just have to be honest to everybody, like I'm one of those guys that understands how lucky I am to be in that situation, but I also worked very hard to get there. So there's more satisfaction in that.
Yeah.
It's not like it just like landed in my lap. Like I studied hard and I worked hard, and I got frustrated, and there were several times when I was a young aspiring actor that I thought, well, maybe I should join the Marine Corps. I don't know if this is me. And, and then one thing leads to the next. And I land a John Hughes movie and it changed everything.
It sure did. I mean, that movie is, well, it's iconic and it's almost 40 years old at this point, which is
Weird Science for anybody who's following along is what we're talking about. Was that part of the audition, that sound?
No, that was actually an improv in the moment.
Really?
As much of Downey and I's work was on that movie, John really let us go, and a lot of that stuff from the mall scene and entering the bar into the party, yeah, it was all just improv.
Hey, brother, what's happening, my main man? Right on. Scotch.
Straight up?
Yeah, give me the whole bottle.
Tell you what, you bend over. Now I'll shove it straight up your ass.
On the rocks is fine.
That's amazing. Can you just talk a little bit about, because you said, I'm like, you're debating the Marine Corps. You're obviously at that point in your life, you're totally in the audition grind. Is that fair to say that you're just like, you're auditioning, but nothing's connecting, no bites, and then you just
no jobs. So
no jobs.
If I'm going to explain it correctly to people who aren't in the business, and then to people who are, they'll relate. Is when I was going to class and I was studying at the Loft Studio in Hollywood, which was scary and exciting at the same time, because part of being an actor is actually having to do the work, Yeah. And if it was easy, everybody would be able to do it. And I don't mean on TikTok. And and when you're going to auditions and you're going to class and you're getting callbacks but not actually getting hired, there's a juxta there, isn't there? So I mean, I'm getting callbacks and I'm getting close, but sometimes it's hard to differentiate what feels worse, getting close and not getting, or just not even hitting one out in the park. You're just striking out. But there's that old saying is, I'd rather be at the plate striking out than be in the stands, being or a couch coach,
Yeah.
It's easy to look in and go, it's indulgent, or who do you think you are, or I could do that, or I could do that better, or whatever it is. Because as an actor, you put yourself up for critique, don't you? Some people love your work and you get accolades and they want your autograph, and some people, are haters and they don't like your work, or they want to make fun of you or put you down. But whatever, I've never cared about any of that. All I ever really cared about was the fulfillment that comes with working hard at something and then achieving it, and then executing the job, like I said, because there's something to that, you guys. You audition, you study, you meet, you get a job, and then here comes the work, right? You have to, am I going to show up and mail it in and just ask the director to show me what to do? Or am I going to, as I learned in class, show the director who the character is by studying and preparing and marrying my own experiences with the facts based from the script? Who am I? What am I doing here? Where am I at? What do I want? All those questions that you learn in acting class.
Yeah.
And so, when I did Weird Science, I was at a point where I told my mom, because I was still living at home. I was 18, and I was auditioning for about a year. And then I thought, man, I'm frustrated and I've paid a lot of dues. But, that's how I felt then. Looking back in retrospect, that was nothing. But when you're in the middle of it, it can be kind of daunting. So I got to that point where I read Weird Science, and I thought, if I don't get this job, then something's wrong, because that's who I was in high school. I was that kind of bully that never was physical. You know, I always used humor, and if somebody took it the wrong way, you have to catch me to take it out on me. That's who I was, you know.
That's funny.
And I mean, we used to do that growing up anyway. We used to go out and say, well, I don't know, what do you want to do? I don't know, what do you want to do? Well, let's go get chased, you know. Let's go just hammer somebody verbally and make them chase us.
Amazing.
And so when I got to that point, I said to my mom, if I don't get this job, I'm just going to join the Marine Corps, and then I'm going to tackle it later. Because I did want to join the Marine Corps.
How come? Why?
I just, sometimes, you know, you just have like an intuitive or an instinctual feeling about something, and I knew I could have been a good Marine. And then my mom said, I'm going to hold you to that. So I went in, and I make a long story short, I read with Craig Sheffer. Craig Sheffer and I went in together as Max and Ian. And for those of you that don't know who Craig Sheffer is, he's a fantastic actor.
Oh yeah.
He was in A River Runs Through It.
Some Kind of Wonderful, and
a lot of great films.
Yep.
We went in together and we read for John Hughes in his office at Universal, and John just looked at us and said, "You're hired." He pointed at me, he said, "You're Max," and he pointed at Craig and he said, "You're Ian."
Wow.
And all of a sudden it felt easy.
Yeah.
So I you know, I said, "Come again?" He said, "Yeah, you're hired." And then the casting director, Jackie Birch McNamara now, she said, "Well, Robert is not Taft-Hartley." And he said, "Taft-Hartley him." And that's when they sign you into the Screen Actors Guild.
Yep.
And in that situation before that audition, it's one of those catch-22s, you guys. You can't get a job without a SAG card, and you can't get a SAG card without a job.
Yep.
So it's a very tricky place to be, which added to the frustration. Because there was a couple of jobs where I think they wanted to hire me, but I wasn't in the Actors Guild yet.
Yep.
So to finish that, because maybe many of you are wondering, well, what the hell happened to Craig Sheffer?
Yeah.
He fell out to do That Was Then, This Is Now with Emilio Estevez.
Love that movie.
That S.E. Hinton movie, which was awesome.
Yep.
And he was awesome in.
Sure was.
He decided to go that direction and take that film. So I got a call. Actually, my brother waved me down. I was surfing out at Toes Beach, and my brother waved me in and said, "Dude, Universal's been calling you for like 2 hours. Like, you got to jam over there. There's some kind of an emergency." And I thought, "Oh shit, am I going to get fired?" You know?
Right.
And I wound up speeding down to Universal Studios, and Jackie Birch said, "You know, here's the news about Craig, and we want you to read with this actor who just flew in from New York." And I said, "Okay." And she said, "It's another Robert, and he's sitting right over there. And why don't you guys go rehearse? And after a few minutes, come on in and you know, read with him." And so I met Robert Downey Jr. In John Hughes' office, and it took about 4 seconds before we knew we were going to be tight friends. And we started to rehearse the scene together, and I was a bit in awe of his comedic timing, his comfortability, his execution I mean, the dude was already a Renaissance man, a movie star, a fucking psychopathic comedian, a demented soul. And I knew right away that he should be a mentor of mine, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah.
And we went in and we read, and just as quick as Craig and I got hired, he hired a Downey to play Ian, and the rest is history.
Talk about a dramatically different style too, Craig Sheffer and Robert Downey Jr., because at that time Robert Downey Jr. had that more of a comedic buddy look to him, right? And Craig Sheffer was more of that like chiseled leading man kind of hunky boy, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
now you're paired up with a guy who is on the similar level with you, I think, as far as you guys really complement each other or did in the movie at least.
Thank you. I mean, you know, I honestly, Craig was actually pretty funny in the audition. And you're right though, Robert was a different take on it.
Yeah.
And I really get along well with Craig anyway. And I think that kind of like those buddy roles, it's really, I think the key is connecting personally.
Yes.
And then when you can take that connection and move that relationship onto the screen, it's just going to work all the time.
Oh yeah, no doubt. No doubt. I mean, you guys are still friends. You and Robert are still friends to this day, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Love that guy.
And then, so you're saying post Weird Science, you knew, okay, you don't have to go to the Marine Corps, but you know, so your mom was probably excited or about that as well. And then, and then how soon were you able to kind of move out and then sort of what happened? Because, you know, you knew it was John Hughes. You probably knew something was going to be big about this movie, right?
Absolutely. It changed everything. I mean, I immediately moved out of my mother's house 25 years later.
It's a good call, by the way. Free Italian.
Good work.
You know?
Good work.
I was living at home while I made that movie because it was easier, and I just had a great relationship with my mom, so there was no kind of, you know, weird vibe about that. You know, when I was only 18, and you know, it's perfectly acceptable to live at home at 18, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, any age really.
Yeah, I mean, well, I've done it a couple of times.
Listen, yeah.
Mom, you think I can move back in? Honey, you're 40 and you're married. Relax. It's just temporary. Yeah. So then, during the making of that movie, you know, I just learned a lot. I had a blast. I made quick friends with Robert and Bill Paxton and Anthony Michael Hall. We were kind of like four amigos around that time, and we had a lot of laughs, man. I mean, Anthony Michael Hall is one of the funniest dudes I've ever met, and pair him with the funniest dude I've ever met, which is Downey. When it comes to spur of the moment, just his own disposition on things, like, you know, I don't want to blow smoke up his ass, but I will, because he's Tony Stark. No. I'm just being honest. You know, I'm 57. I've met a lot of people. I've been to a lot of places in the world, and Robert's one of the smartest, funniest dudes I've ever met, and that's just the truth. And he really makes me laugh, and without trying. And that's what I love about a great sense of humor, is when it's not pushed. It's just genuine, you know. And so Michael and Robert and Bill and I, you know, we were painting the town red, and we had a great time in Chicago, and came back, and then the last day of shooting Weird Science, I had an audition for A Nightmare on Elm Street 2. So Robert, actually, I had crashed my Z28 IROC.
Oh,
yeah.
goodness.
I was that guy for a minute. I had the Z28, and I would, every 3 weeks, the tires would go bald for me peeling out, and I was making up for something, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And no, I used to take the boys on Mr. Toad wild rides, man, around, and you know, Michael and Bill would be glued to their seat going slow down, and Downey'd be going faster, 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 faster. And so I almost killed us on several occasions, but I had to, you know, I lost the car in a car accident that was no fault of my own. So,
no, sounds like it. No.
Yeah. So Bobby gave me a ride to my audition, and I remember I was asking him some questions, and I'll never forget, and I took it with me for the rest of my auditioning career, at least. If not my whole career. He was looking at me, and I was asking him some questions that were probably pertinent, and he just looked at me and he said, "Just don't ever let anything get in the way between you and your work." And then he took off. He just drove off after that, and I was like, "Oh, okay, bye," you know.
Very
And,
dramatic. Yeah.
I mean, that's how you impress something upon somebody, don't you? You just like, why don't you drop all the bullshit and just go in there and be yourself, is really what he was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I went into the audition, and they had asked me if I had read the script, and I said yes. And they said, what did you think? And I said, well, can I really be honest? And they said, okay, yeah. And I said, well, my friends and I don't really speak this way. They go, what do you mean? I said, well, we don't just use vulgarity if there's not a sense of humor behind it,
Mm.
and some of it just seems a little crass. And I just don't think it sounds realistic. And they said, well, give us an example. I said, okay. And I flipped through the script. Now that, the pressure's on, right?
Yeah.
But not really, but kind of. And I looked at one of the lines in the movie, and it said, are you fucking her for car fare? And I said, and they said, what would you say? I said, I don't know. Are you mounting her nightly or what, bro? And they were like, they looked at each other and they were like, oh, give us another example. And then I turned the page and it said, fuck you, asshole. And I was like, dude, get off my hood, right? Just little like twist on it,
Yeah.
And they said, we really like what you're doing. And they pointed downstairs through the window. And they said, you see that guy sitting on the stairs down there? I said, yeah. They said, go outside, introduce yourself, rehearse with him, and come back when you guys are ready. We want you to read together. And it was Mark Patton. And much like I got Weird Science with Craig, and much like how I, reacclimated with Robert, I went down and did the same sort of connection with Mark. And we went back upstairs and we read together and we got hired on the spot again. And then I thought to myself, well, this shit's easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Where's this been?
Yeah.
At the beginning. Yeah.
And then the funny thing is, the great thing as an actor is, they say you're hired, you're Jesse and you're Grady. And here's our start date. We're going to be in contact with your representation. Congratulations, welcome aboard. But do us a favor and don't mention anything to any of the other actors out there, because you still have to lead them.
Right. Look sad. Look sad when you leave. Yeah.
And so it's great because you leave and there's always that actor that goes, hey man, break a leg, good luck. And I'm just thinking to myself, go fuck yourself.
Go fuck yourself. Really.
No, that's not what I really said.
Get off my hood, bro.
Yeah. No, what I really said was, back at you.
Yeah, of course. But that's an incredibly unusual experience, right? To get hired in the room, especially these days.
These days, most of it's done later. There's most of the auditions that I got the job on, you find out later. Most of it. Sometimes they'll hire you and go, great. When I did 24, that it was the same thing. The director was watching me and he goes, stop. Let's just hire this guy. He's great. Sometimes it happens that way. Yeah. And there was nothing really kind of satisfying. It was kind of more like he'll do whatever.
Right. Yeah.
And then there's other jobs where, other auditions where I feel like, man, I nailed that shit, and you don't get the job. And there's been a few occasions where I feel like, man, I kind of shit the bed on that one, and then I wind up getting hired. So you just never know. Yeah,
you really got to detach, I would imagine.
That's what comes as an art later, is really letting it go and moving on to the next.
Well, you were doing that. Oh no, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say you were doing that though during that span, from like 85, 86, 87, working on movies where you're just one thing after the other. If you're not the lead, you're the second build, or you're right up there, practically. And that must have been wild for you at that time, because you're like, okay, like you said, oh, this shit's easy, you know, suddenly going from being at a place so low emotionally where you're like, fuck it. This is it. This will be my last time I try this, to suddenly like, oh, okay, this is gonna, when's the next project?
Phone
When's
is
the next
ringing.
movie?
Yeah, it's going to work out. So, here comes truth and here comes reality,
Yep.
Then I started back then, the TV movie, there wasn't really, not like it got in the 90s and not like it is today, where film stars do television and television people go on to do big movies.
Right.
In the late 80s, early 90s, they were very different worlds.
Totally.
And I started to do television, and I really kind of got locked out of the movie scene for a while,
Mhm.
and really never really got back in. I mean, people would consider me a B movie actor. I would say my resume in TV is A, and aside from the iconic, cult classics that I've been lucky enough to be in, most of the movies have been kind of B movies. I haven't been the lead in studio films, and so a lot of just a lot transpired, seconds and inches over here, and then mistakes and life, and dude, if I'm being honest, like partying
Yeah.
and stuff got in the way, and then I wasn't caring so much, and then I had some really big disappointments, some projects that I was supposed to do that got pulled back. And if I started naming, some of the movies that I got hired for, and then they pull back and then they recast because they get a different director, or there's so many things that are involved politically.
Yeah.
Now I just am grateful, looking back in retrospect, that I've had the longevity that I've had. I'm still working. I got movies coming out. I'm working on a Western now. I'm going next month to work on a video game, and I got movies in the works. And, there's been some really great ups and some really fantastic momentum swings. And there's been some tremendous downs and disappointments and frustrations. And it's just, I look back in my life now, and it doesn't work that way. But man, if I only knew then what I know now,
Yeah.
how different I would have been able to do it. And then there are certain things that you look back and go, you know what, it worked out exactly the way it was supposed to. And so being able to have a decent amount of acceptance as that in that is a gift now.
It is. And we have a friend, Richard Horowitz, who's an actor and teacher as well, phenomenal teacher. Talks about there are no coincidences, in his opinion. Everything happens for a reason, so to speak. And he was on the show, and he had mentioned that he was cut from the movie Thrashin. And so he went to the premiere, and he's like, "Where's my scene? Where's my scene? I got cut."
Oh, Richard.
But you did not. You did not. You were so. I mean, many people often say that Tommy Hook is like the lead, is the main badass of the movie. That character is, especially living here in Santa Monica, near Dogtown. It's such a iconic role. That difference between the Valley kids versus the Venice kids, and that rivalry. That was kind of portrayed a little bit in Valley Girl, right? With Nick Cage being from Venice. But here you are, Tommy Hook is like this iconic kind of villain from like a sports movie. Can you take us back a little bit to Thrashin and your times with Josh Brolin and kind of kicking his ass around?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm glad you talk about Thrashing, because out of all the films I've done, out of all the television shows, all the projects, Thrashing was the most fun I had, hands down, on any project I've ever done. It was so much fun,
Cool.
and we had such a blast. And, I was getting paid to skateboard around,
Right.
stoned out of my mind. And
Nice.
you know, honestly, when I auditioned for that, that was another actually example of getting hired on the spot. I went in and I read it. I read this scene with Jimmy McNichol. You guys remember Jimmy McNichol?
Yes.
Christy McNichol's brother. They used to have that television show when I was a kid.
Yeah.
They were like Donnie and Marie,
Yeah.
They had kind of uh, singing kind of what do you call it?
Variety show.
Variety show, exactly. Thank you. And anyways, I read with him, and he was reading for Corey, and I was reading for
Really?
for Hook, and we did the audition, and I could tell he didn't feel very good about what he did, and he just wasn't right for it. He was nothing bad against Jimmy McNichol. I'm not a hater, but he was soft, and it wasn't right for him. He was better for other kinds of things, but not that role.
Yeah.
And so he went out of the room, and they go, hold on a second, they go, can you actually skate? And I said, yeah. And they said, can you show us? And I said, sure. And they handed me a skateboard, and I skateboarded around the parking lot a little bit, and I pulled a couple tricks. And the director goes, well, I've seen enough. And the producer goes, hey man, do you want to be Corey or do you want to be Hook?
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
You got offered either one.
Yeah. And I go, that's a no-brainer. I'll play Hook.
Hell
Right?
yeah.
Hook's the role.
Yeah.
Totally.
And they said, okay. And they go, here are some of the guys that we're looking at for Corey. And I saw Josh Brolin's picture up there, and they liked him already. But I said, that guy right there. I had met Josh on an audition, a couple of auditions, and I liked Josh. I liked meeting him. I liked Goonies. I liked him. I met him. He was really cool, and he was actually cooler to me in person than I thought he would be from watching Goonies. One of those guys where I was like, oh, this dude's kind of punk rock. He's kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
And so I go, that guy, and they go, and they looked at each other, and they go, that's our first choice, right? If you would have picked Corey, we think we would have wanted him to maybe go for Hook. And I was like,
no.
And they said, no, we're on page with you.
Yeah.
And so that's how it worked out. And it wasn't because I said, I'm just being clear. Like, I picked him, and that's who they liked. And then Brolin came on and wound up doing the movie. And I got to be the leader of, some of my skateboard, heroes growing up. I grew up in California. I surfed, I skateboarded, I rode motorcycles, I did martial arts. I was a troublemaker. I loved everything about what we had a chance to show better, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
It got a little campy and corny for my taste during the making of Thrashing. And I thought that we were kind of missing a little bit what it could have been if only everybody would listen to me. No, if only we didn't get so hung up on kind of the brighter side of the 80s and not get a little bit darker.
Yeah.
That's why I have this movie I'm writing now. Like, I've never seen the 80s depicted, you guys, the way I lived it. Never seen it. It's always that kind of, day glow and, bad hair, and which was there, by the way, but not in Hollywood and not in Venice Beach in the 80s.
No.
And I think that the Daggers were able to really capture what I thought was the magic of that movie, but it just could have been a little bit better executed, right? And and when the movie premiered in San Francisco, here's an example. The Daggers were loosely based on a skateboard gang in San Francisco called the Jacks. And the Jacks were these really great skaters, very punk rock and just really super wild in the streets kind of attitude guys, and girls. There was the Jacks and the Hags, and
Nice.
this lifestyle was pretty cool, man. Like it was all about surf, skate, and punk rock,
Right on.
And when the shot came of the Daggers coming over the hill,
Yeah.
it started a riot in the movie theater, and they shut the movie theater down.
Oh,
Really?
shit.
First night, everybody just went crazy because there's a very powerful image and the music and everything about it. And that was that part that I knew if we would have stuck with the realistic, darker side, I think that the movie would have been an even bigger hit than it was.
Well, that's interesting because I don't disagree with you at all on that. I think you're totally accurate. I think, Dustin and I have covered many of those kind of iconic sport related dramas from the 80s, like Rad and North Shore. And we do love those movies. We certainly do, but they have like a bebop quality to them, where the antagonist is not really that much of an antagonist. It's more just like a everyday kind of bully. I think a little Tough Turf, which we've talked about quite often, had elements of that. It could have been darker. It has a dark side, but it doesn't necessarily hit. But yeah, you guys Thrashin rides this fine line of being like, is it a sports movie with the big, trophy at the end, or is this darker side to it with the Daggers kind of going in and being more kind of devious? I personally like that darker side as well, and would have been nicer to see that more highlighted.
Studios were afraid, and they thought that they had to bubblegum it in order to make it commercial and successful. And our producer, Alan Sachs, actually didn't feel that way either. He was one of the creators on Chico and the Man and Welcome Back, Kotter, and he had a lot of experience in the business. And so did our director. He was really about West Side Story on skateboards, and
Totally.
he was A-Rab from the original West Side Story, and he also played it on Broadway. And I just think the idea was cool, because obviously it's Romeo and Juliet anyway.
Yeah.
And I think that we did have elements of it, and man, there were moments, and then there were certain other parts of Thrashin that just got, I thought, a little kind of corny, and it didn't need to be there. But it is what it is. And it's one, and I'll give you an example. Josh Brolin was being interviewed, and they said to him, through all of his tremendous success in the last 15 years, it couldn't happen to a nicer guy, by the way.
That's great to hear.
And they asked him this question. They said, what's the worst movie you ever did? And he said, it'd have to be this movie I did called Thrashing. And so the next time I saw him, I pulled him to the side and I said, hey man, you can't talk shit about Thrashing, bro. Like that movie changed people's lives. And I agree with you. We missed the mark in certain areas, and he kind of wanted to be more of a Dagger because Josh kind of really is more of a Dagger.
Yeah.
And I think that he felt like some of his scenes with Pamela Gidley, my sister, they kind of made it a little corny, just like they did with my hair. And there were certain things I was telling him, no, I want my hair. I want to do like this whole thing with my hair. And they were like, no, we want the ponytail. And it's like for one line, the Indian thing, right? I go, it's like, that's not his hit, man. I fucking, let's mohawk. Let's go calico. Like there were some things that I wanted to do differently. Nice. And I wanted to drop like the blue paint and some of the, stuff that I just didn't agree with. But, they would kind of were adamant about what they wanted, and you know, I am an actor getting paid, and I did what the director and producer told me to do. But I did as much as I can put my own thing on it. And when I said to Josh, man, you know, like, despite some of the things that you and I agree on, Thrashing, man, some people that I've met, you know, it really impacted their life, much like A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 impacted young gay men in the 80s.
Totally.
Thrashing impacted skateboarders and punk rockers and kids that wanted to like get out of a shell, and they wanted to, like, you know, come up, and they wanted to be gnarly and rad, you know.
Yeah.
And he Jeff Bridges gave him this award, a life achievement award at this film festival, and Josh invited Natasha and I, my girl and I, to attend, and in the middle of the Q&A, he retracted that statement because I spoke to him about it. And he
Nice.
thought about it, and he said it on the stage. He goes, you know, I thought about it. My buddy Rusler's here, and I was asked this question, and I said something about this movie Thrashing, but now I started really thinking about it, and it's probably one of the movies that I'm most proud of. And you know, it's not like it compares to No Country for Old Men, or, you know, some of the great films that Josh has been in.
Plain
But
W.
it's more about the idea of what we're talking about, you guys. Sometimes movie comes along and it impacts people, and it's innovative, and it's different, and it inspires people. And I think he realized how lucky we are to have been in that movie.
Yeah, I'm glad you said something too. Well, because it's real easy to kind of base it on your own experience. Like if what you're saying is, and he wanted to be more of a dagger and he was held back, then his perception of that experience could be that, you know. I mean, I would really argue that Tommy Hook is kind of the hero of this movie, because Tommy has empathy, and, like, you know, he's a human being, whereas I feel like Josh's character Corey for most of this movie is like, where the fuck is Chrissy? You know, shut up, Hook. And, you know, you're like, dude, like, there's a scene where he calls you, or he calls Chrissy, and you pick up the phone, and he's like, hey, Chrissy. And you're like, no, man, like, you're having fun with him as anyone would. Like, no, this isn't Chrissy. Like, and I'm gonna get you, Hook. And it's like, it's such a one-dimensional thing that makes him very unlikable. So for me, it's like, that's what
his thing was with it. You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
He wanted to arc too, and he had different ideas about it, just as I had different ideas about Hook. And I just don't think that he was quite satisfied with that kind of approach. That I think that's exactly what he saw and how he felt, is like, you know, man, I didn't really want my character to come off that way. And, you know, and we all know that Josh is anything but one dimensional, you know.
of course.
Yeah.
I want to show you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I want to show you something.
Yes.
Yeah. Who would you rather be? The Ramp Locals or the Daggers?
Yeah.
Man, that brings back so many great memories.
I mean, I'm showing, for those that are listening, I'm showing a picture to Robert from
Trading cards.
Thrashing.
You got there.
Yeah, these cards are there's a company called Phantom Cardboard, a dude who just makes these independently.
Really cool.
And you're with Velvet, played by Sherilyn Fenn.
Yeah, love
who's
her
a fox.
too.
And
love
so
Sherilyn.
good.
And Tony Alva, and I mean, I made so many friends in that movie, you guys. I made lifelong friends on that film.
I love it.
That's awesome.
And I really did. I really had, you know, Christian Hosoi, who's a professional skateboarder, was a little young, and they were kind of reluctant to hire him. And I was so, you know, kind of insistent with them. I said, listen, you really got to get this kid on the Daggers, because he adds like a lot of legitimacy. Him and Tony Hawk are the two #1 skateboarders in the world. And,
right.
You know, and Tony Hawk's not really a dagger. He's more of a ramp local.
Yeah.
Soy is a dagger. And, you know, Tony Hawk was in the film as well. He was in the Del Mar skate scene.
Yep.
And but Christian came along, and they hired him even though he was still 16, and and we became such great friends that we actually became roommates for a few years, and we just really had a really good time. So getting back to some of the mistakes, like in the middle of my career, you guys, is it really a mistake? Like, you look back and go, well, maybe, I got sidetracked, but would I trade those experiences and the fun that I had to have a better career today? Maybe, but I would never really want to trade those experiences. After a while, they become consequential, and then I had to make a change, right?
Mhm.
That's why I'm not afraid to say to anybody today, and even in a public forum, that I'm clean and sober today, right? And that's what I needed to do. I needed to get clean and sober because I did it the way I did it, and now I needed to change without a judgment of anybody else and what they do, or what people think about it, despite even what I think and feel about it. It's really what I needed to do inside. Just like I needed to do what I did in the 90s, man. Like, there was a couple of times when it was magic and it was perfect. And there was times when the wheels fell off and I, was really troubled and I didn't know what I was going to do. And all through the ups and downs and the trials and tribulations, I would always seem to be able to keep working, right?
Yeah.
And I probably never met the potential. I know I never met the potential that I had. But again, like, it's about accepting, like, this is what I did, this is who I am, and this is where I'm at now. And who knows? I mean, if I would have hit maybe the success that I knew was in front of me, it wasn't like, oh man, I could have, like, I kind of was there and then it kind of dropped. And so it hurts sometimes when you have it and you lose it more than never getting it at all. And who knows if I would have even made it, because the
Yeah.
way I was going, I might not have made it. And just like a lot of guys that I know that didn't make it, great guys like River Phoenix or Rodney Harvey or Harold Pruitt,
Exactly.
fantastic people.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, you got a beautiful family. You've got, between you and your, like you said, your girl, you got 6 kids, right?
Absolutely.
And you got a relatively youngster in your, and you got, you're a new dad again, essentially. And you look great.
Thank you.
And you
Yeah.
clean, sober, beautiful, man. Like, yeah, like, that is something to be so proud of in a world where we are constantly having to battle that with, friends and family or whatnot. And these things happen, and you've gone through the fire and you're out on the other side and you're working and you got all sorts of projects going on.
And I'm happy and I've got joy in my life and I'm fulfilled as a man. And
that's what matters.
the insides and the outsides are clicking. And like
Awesome.
you said, I got a lot of love and responsibilities,
Yeah.
My oldest son's 18 and my daughter's 2.5.
Oh, wow.
And I'm in love, and I got a whole plethora of friends. I got fantastic friends that I've accumulated over the years growing up here.
That's awesome.
And my family now, it's a strange kind of transition to be the patriarch. My mom and my stepdad and my dad are no longer with us, and through losing some great friends, and talking about acting again, watching dozens of actors fall out to quit and do something else, or move, to the Midwest and just go, I'm kind of done. And I get it, I get why some of the actors that I've known that were working all the time, like killing it.
Most of the cast of Shag is retired.
Yeah, they just kind of like don't want to do it anymore. And there was a time in the middle where it wasn't really my priority. There's some regrets. Like I said earlier, that's not how life works. Life doesn't work that way. Oh, if I could change it. Well, you can't.
Yeah.
It worked out the way it worked out. And what's the real gift is not letting regrets, not attaching to the regret, not wallowing in a regret, not getting stifled by a mistake or a sin or a regret, but by moving forward. And that's why I got clean, and that's why I'm sober. And when I say sober, that getting clean is abstinence, right? I've had many bouts of abstinence, but being sober is not just not drinking. Being sober is being sound of mind, body, and spirit, and working on mind, body, and soul, and being a good husband and a good father and a great friend, and at the end of my parents' life, a good son. And I've taken that into my work now, and I still believe that my best is yet to come. I feel like I'm a seasoned actor now, so when I get a job, I have a comfort level and I have a routine that works. I study hard and I show up prepared, and I'm comfortable standing on my mark. And I really feel it's been a big gift. But that's why I say it, and I like to talk about it. And for those of you that are listening, there's a few reasons why I talk about it. I hope to inspire people, and I hope to let people know that any dream's attainable without being patronizing or corny about it. It's true, man. It's like, no matter if anybody's going through hardships or challenges now, like, everything passes. And I'm not on some pedestal like soapboxing, like, man, I'm human like you, and it's like Downey is. I remember when Downey was in big trouble. I remember when he was in big trouble and he was going to prison. I remember when we didn't think he was going to make it, and several other friends of mine too that have gone through tremendous lows and have come back much stronger. I think Robert Downey Jr. is probably the greatest comeback story in Hollywood history, and it couldn't happen to a better person, right? But like, people go sometimes, man, do you get jealous? And I go, no, that's not the word for it. I don't get envious. I'm definitely not jealous, because I love him too much to be jealous. It'd be nice to have llamas as pets and a $300,000 sports car, but the funny thing about Robert is I got to live that life with him from the beginning to now. I don't have to have all that to be able to experience it with him. And he also gets to experience the love and the friendship and the camaraderie and the humor, and someone to share it with in me when we hang. It's not like we hang as tight as we used to because we have families, but when we get together, it's like no time has passed, because there's an eternal connection there that we built through thick and thin, through some success and traveling. And even when we were both really working a lot, Robert always made more money than I did. So he was always kind of more of the ringleader of what we would do. Not that he would pay for everything, but when I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars, he was making millions. And so when we would go out together, he did take care of a lot of stuff, and he knows how grateful that I was for all the beautiful things that he's done for me. We've traveled, we've gone to, concerts and parties, and he's introduced me to like really fantastic people. And when we were both going through struggles, we were there for each other. And when he lost his dad, when I lost mine, that's the kind of relationship where There's no backstory required. There doesn't have to be an over explanation of what's needed. Really, what is important is the connection that you've kind of been blessed with. It's not even earned. It's kind of bestowed, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like the career that I've had, I feel so lucky. And if you asked me when I was first getting clean, many, many years ago, I did have a lot more regrets. And since really kind of turning my life around, I've realized that some of the things that I thought were the worst, most inconvenient, unproductive things that I thought nothing good could ever come from, have turned out to be the biggest blessings in my life, because it's a matter of perspective. Like, first of all, that's why I'm more appreciative of my life now, because I've been down over there. And also, I didn't realize how many things I could utilize to help other people, or to help my sons, or to help other people struggling with addiction.
Yeah.
Or the wisdom that it would bring me to really negate fear when stuff comes up, because man, that's nothing compared to what I've been through. We're going to be just fine going this way. And that's very valuable. And even some of the things that happened to me as a boy that are private, that were horrible, I didn't think anything good could come from that, but I was wrong, because now I help other people that have gone through similar situations, and nobody else can help them like somebody who's been through it. No doctor, no psychiatrist, no nothing. When there's certain things that happen to us as humans that only another human that has gone through it can really support us through that.
Yeah.
Because then we feel that they understand, and there's no defense.
That experience.
So, the experience, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, look, obviously we wanted to have you on our show to talk about your career, but so much more.
That's why I like going to these conventions now, you guys. I go to conventions and I meet fans, and my favorite part is just being able to connect and not really having that kind of I'm the star and you're the fan relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just a couple of humans going, especially when they are fans and they're like, really excited to meet me. There's nothing like letting them see me. That's what feels good too, because then I get to see them. And you know what I mean by that.
Yeah, totally.
It's kind of like Avatar, I see you,
See you.
Robert, thank you so much for coming on our show, man. Like I know taking up your time and all that stuff. It really means a lot to us to have you on.
My pleasure. All good.
Amazing.
Thank you for having me.